Hi there. Welcome to the Right Here, Right Now live show. This show has one simple question. What's on your heart and mind right here, right now in this moment? We explore the depths and breadths of our humanity through that one simple question over the course of 30 to 45 minutes. I hope that you'll join us. I hope you'll enjoy the exploration. And this tune was created for me personally by the incredible Peter Griffiths, one half of the amazing Mind Takeaway. Do let us know what you think. Let us know what you take away. And of course, we always welcome challenges too. Hope to see you on the exploration. Hello, hello. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Hope you are doing well. I'm quite humbled and excited. My guest today, someone that we haven't actually spoken properly in years yet. Kelly Swingler was my first ever coach, but we'll chat a bit more about that as we get going today. But before I bring Kelly on today, I just want to remind everybody that we've actually got Joe Homstead and I have actually got an in-person gathering. Do you remember that, people? In person, hugging, kissing, connecting. We are allowed to do it again, honest, if you feel comfortable. Well, Joe and I are holding space and having some fun across the 20th and the 21st of July 2022 in less than 6 weeks down in the beautiful Dorset countryside. Second time we're running this gathering. If it was interesting, let me know. Go onto Google, type in Human Development Space into Google or your favourite search engine, and you will find this pop up on Eventbrite. So it would be really, really lovely to see you there. So let's bring on the main human being. It's the Kelly Swingler. How are you?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. And like I say, it's almost like slightly out of body, Kelly, because it's like you were the first ever human that I went to and said, hey, will you do a bit of coaching with me? Because I just need some support. How weird.
Well, I'm pleased that I was able to. Well, I suppose humbled, really. I suppose I always love when people, can you help me? Can you coach me? And there are so many coaches out there. So I'm always really, really humbled when I get picked. And if I'm the first, then that makes it even nicer.
Oh, well, look, thank you for joining me today. I've just popped up Kelly's site on the bottom, kellyswingler.com. Well, look, as I would love people to get to know a bit more about you, those that may not know you today, or maybe someone that watches or listens back. But as you tell us that, I'd really love to learn, Kelly, right now, right here in this moment, what is on your heart and mind? I'm really curious.
In this precise moment, or in general, in the wider space that we're working in? Where do you want me to take that?
Wherever you like.
Okay, so let's go both. I think in this particular moment in time, what's on my mind is that I have been talking a lot for the last couple of days. I've done quite a lot of interviews. I've been interviewing as well as been interviewed quite a lot. And I suppose instantly what comes to mind is, how do I continue adding value with the conversations that I'm having? So I suppose in the immediate here and now, it's how can I ensure that I continue to add value? If I take where I am in the world right now with everything that I'm doing and all of the work that I'm doing, I think just the big things for me at the moment are the big thing is just around this burnout. Like, how do we get everyone to realize that we can prevent it, that we can recover from it, although the prevention is easier than the recovery. And I just want to keep this conversation going around burnout and well-being and looking after ourselves and knowing that we are all worthy of space and growth and to look after ourselves.
So tell us, thank you, Kelly, for sharing that. I'm really curious. Where is that passion for you right now? Why is it so important to Kelly?
You will know this already, but for those that are watching today, I hit burnout really badly in 2013 for a variety of different reasons. I think I was working in a really toxic environment. I was working in a really toxic workplace. I was trying to prove my worth. I was trying to single-handedly change this toxic organization and the culture that I was working in. I'm not going to say single-handedly. I had an incredible team and there were other people that were doing that. But I think I felt, with the role that I was in and the level that I was at, I felt like a lot of that weight was on my shoulders. Hit burnout really badly in 2013. didn't learn my lessons first time round, continue to then work even harder to understand what had caused my burnout, where burnout comes from, what creates stress, and really try to fix things for other people. So I hit burnout again in 2015. And I think we just continue to see more and more people experiencing burnout. The burnout gender gap has doubled since 2019. 2020 and 2021 have had a huge impact on how people are feeling in terms of stress levels, reaching burnout, pushing harder. And I think some of that is about almost like giving ourselves permission to know that it's okay to stop. Like we don't constantly have to be proving and striving and struggling. And I think just as I see those numbers rise and I see the conversations that are continuing to take place, and I see more and more people leaving workplaces as a result of burnout, and with a lot of the clients that I speak to, they're not being listened to, they're not being supported. I speak to people on a daily basis that are absolutely at rock bottom, like they are in tears, they have got no energy, they are really struggling. And I think so I want to, and I've literally just come off a conversation where I've just said exactly the same thing, but I feel like I kind of feel like I did all of that hard work and burnt out twice so that I could stop other people having to experience and go through the same thing. Like that's what I feel really passionate about. Like I did all of the hard work for everybody. Like you don't have to do it. You know, I've shouldered that for everybody. I know there's a different way of doing it. I know that we can stop it. I know that we can change it. And that's where I want to get to. That's the kind of big passion driver for me.
It's really impacting. Like, I can really feel that passion, Kelly. And I thank you for sharing that. I'm also curious to pick up on a few different points you just shared. So there's this one piece around you experienced it a second time for whatever reason. You didn't accept or acknowledge the lessons first time round. Or something else is going on. Do you mind maybe speaking to that a little bit? What was it that you pushed through and said, no, you know, I don't need to listen to that first sort of set of lessons somehow, and it took the second set for you to really go, okay, universe, like I'm hearing you now.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessary that I didn't listen to the lessons. I think the big learning, as I look at it now, the big realization was that I did not allow myself the time to recover. That's what got me to hit it again. I got to that point of burnout. I began to really understand at a core level, at an intuitive level, really, really deep down, I began to understand what had caused that, what I needed to change, and how I could implement all of those changes. But I got so fixated on how can I stop this happening to anybody else that became my driver. Right. The driver wasn't I need to recover in order to effectively help anybody else through this. My driver became I need to stop everybody else going through what I've just been through. So let me learn, research, study, soak it all up, immediately go into doing all of this stuff for everybody else. Like, let me give you the information, give you the tools, give you all of this stuff to help you doing it. I didn't in any of that think you just need to allow yourself to heal properly. And in not healing, I suppose it's a bit, it's not, but it is. I think if we look at it from a physical perspective, you know, if you've just broken your leg and it's nearly healed, but you all of a sudden start training for a marathon, you're going to do yourself some severe damage, right? That leg is going to break again. It's going to take longer to come out. And I think mentally, emotionally, and physically, it was that broken leg analogy. I had not allowed it to heal properly before I started training for that marathon again. And that's what got me there second time round.
Thank you for sharing that and clarifying, because I'm really intrigued in the interplay between, as again, the work you did with me, Kelly, right? It was so transformational for me as that first step into really looking inside myself, to use your language, the core, right? Actually, and for me, what you helped me with was to see that timeline journey that you did with me all those years ago was wonderful, right? Okay. Yeah. What are those peaks? What are those troughs? What actually happened for you and why? And every time I hit a trough for me, whether that was my burnout episode, whether that's me suppressing emotion, whatever it was, it's because I was putting my self-worth on something outside of me. That was Gary's journey. That was my story. So I'm wondering, from the work you're doing with other people at the moment, I believe is it women specifically that you're trying to serve, or is it more widely?
Yeah. So I suppose again in part of that, I think when I first started this, the big driver for me was to stop people in HR going through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think as I started to look at that more widely, and maybe some of this was because a large part of the HR profession is still women. There are men that are coming in. We've got men at different levels. But I was starting to be contacted by a lot of women outside of the HR space in every sector, at every level. Do you just work with HR? Could you help me? I don't work in HR, but would you help me? I don't work in HR, but could you help me? And I thought, well, if this is a broader problem, I really want to be able to help with it. And I do think there are still some unique challenges that women face within the workplace. I'm not excluding or saying that men in the workplace do not have issues. They absolutely do. When we look at the mental health stats for men in the workplace, when we still look at suicide rates, when we look at all of those sorts of things, I absolutely know there are issues. I would also at some point like to see stats around burnout, stress, mental health, covering all people. A lot of the data and stats out there are specifically focused on men and women. And we know that not everybody falls into those categories. So there's a lot that needs to be done. But yes, for now, with where I am at this moment, with all of those challenges, all of my work. And again, I've still got some guys that I work with. I've got a couple of guys coming to my big event in London next week. So I'm not excluding anybody if they say they want to work with me. But I have made the decision that yes, whilst there is a need for it, my focus, because I then feel I'm able to, I suppose, add more value to a particular group of people. My focus at this current time is on women.
And that's wonderful, right? Because you opened up by saying in this moment you're trying to continue to add value in everything that you're doing. And I guess to some extent, well, not just guess, I know, you need clarity, right? To some extent, we need clarity to be able to serve to the most effective sort of audience somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that comes into play. It's not just in our work, is it? I think if we're trying to design a space for everybody, a lot of the time I think we end up designing something that actually isn't for anybody. I think we've got to, I think the more specific that we can get, and actually if somebody if there's somebody outside of being a woman that think actually you are talking exactly to me, I want to work with you, or could you help me, or could we have a conversation? Absolutely, yes. But it helps me, I suppose, from a conversation perspective, from a research perspective. I mean, there's so much data and information out there. It's overwhelming, isn't it? In terms of burnout, in terms of stress, in terms of mental health, being able to, I suppose, niche that down a little bit to focus on a particular group of people is useful for everybody. And it also allows some of the conversations such as, but what about the men? It allows some of those sorts of conversations to come out and ask, what is it that you need that you don't think you're getting at the minute? I get a lot of pushback from a lot of guys, actually, every time I post something like, why are you only focusing on, like, men have issues too? I'm like, I know men have issues too. I'm not saying that we don't. But, I think that's a wider conversation, and I am well aware that I am only one person and I cannot help everybody. So at this particular point in time, I'm focusing on helping the people that I can help.
No, it's really powerful, because I've definitely been in that space the last several months of like, I think I want to serve these people, right? I end up going in 5 different directions and nobody's got any idea what Gary's saying. So that totally resonate. I'd love to get to a little bit. I want to come to the event. You mentioned you've got an event coming up. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah,
shortly.
I have,
Tell us a little bit about, in your opinion as Kelly, what do you think some of the root causes are, right? Because if we look at burnout, we look at stress, anxiety, mental health, for me, they are a symptom of something not working. Right, whether it be within us, whether it be within the workplace, like what would you point towards as some of the more common root causes? So what are some of maybe the patterns that exist still that are not currently being rectified or looked at or maybe discussed enough that would help reduce the amount of anxiety, stress, burnout, etc.? Is there anything you could point towards, Kelly?
Yeah, can I start with what I think the fix is,
Sure.
Which I think will then kind of lead to the problem. So I talk, and we've touched on this very, very briefly already. I think the fix, if you like, is and this is a huge, this is, I suppose, the basis of all of the work that I'm doing, which is really helping people to understand who they are at the core. I think what causes a lot of the issues is that not enough of us understand who we are at the core. We go through school and we are told that we need to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, think a certain way. We go through all of the education system, we go into work, and I know I had it really from day one that I joined the corporate world, right? We love your energy, but could we have a little bit less of it? We love your voice, but could we have a little bit less of it? We love your enthusiasm, but could you give us a little bit less? We love your ideas, but give us a little bit less. We love it, but just less. And I think over time, you start to become less, or you start to suppress some in order to display less. And I think in some of that suppression, because we've almost kind of boxed some of ourselves and kind of put it on the shelf over there, we can't live as our whole selves. If we're not able to do that, of course, that's going to bring guilt, shame, embarrassment, stress levels, all of those things, because we're not operating from that perspective. And if when we go into the workplace, if all of our leaders and all of our people, if all of us have boxed bits of us, and I'm going to put that bit on that shelf and that bit on that shelf, I'm never operating from my core. I'm never living and leading from my core. And therefore, I can't do the same for other people. So when I've then got that gap, it's like I need to numb that gap. So I can do that through alcohol, or I can do that through drugs, or I can do that through gambling, or I can do that through shopping, or, or whatever else it needs to be. We look for those numbing things. The numbing things don't fix the problem. The stress levels rise. We look for more ways to numb. We look for reasons. We start to blame other people. And I think if all of us could start by getting, this is who I am at the core, this is what's important to me, these are my boundaries, this is how I communicate, this is how I listen, this is how I work. I think if we could get to that place, there is no guilt, there's no shame, there's no embarrassment, there's no imposter syndrome, because I can genuinely say, this is me, take me or leave me. If I don't fit within your organization, I'll go somewhere that I do. If I don't belong in your organization, I'll go somewhere where I do. If I can't find that level of belonging, I'll create it for myself. And I think that's the bit that's missing for me. I think that's the kind of the crux of so many of those issues. And I think that's in the workplace, that's in families, that's in relationships, that's friendships, that's parenting. I think any kind of human to human interaction, human to human contact, if any of us are missing those parts of ourselves, we cannot have that whole interaction.
I'm so grateful you expanded on that, because I'm sitting here just going like ding 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 ding, Kelly, and like ding 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 from the point of view of it's part of the work we did, right? Is that just to share for those that are watching us live or listening or watching this back. So I myself was bullied as a kid, right? You remember that work that we did together, age 12, 13. And I held on to the story of not enoughness for well over 25 years until we worked together. That exercise, and it didn't mean I didn't have a good life. It didn't mean I was very lucky and privileged and all that stuff, which I was. But the inner world of Gary was a much smaller, compressed version of who I could be. Even though outside it was almost like a functioning alcoholic, right? Done a good job. I was still having a nice holiday, still in a great relationship. But inside it was like absolute turmoil. And I think it's that part that's so important that you're speaking to for me, Kelly, which is just because externally we might seem to be okay and doing good work and really performing, if you don't create those conditions to slow down and connect to who and what you are, a lot of stuff can get lost in that journey, just get completely mislaid, can't it?
Yeah, and we're taught, right? Success is the big house, the fast car, the all-inclusive holidays, the designer clothes, the designer watches, right? That's the stuff that we're taught that success looks like, and your happiness is attached to it. And if you drive the big car and if you've got the big house, other people can see your success. So we're kind of, you can't be successful if you don't have enough money. You can't be successful if you don't have the right role. You can't be successful if you have all of these sorts of things. I think we look at, even just some of the conversations that we see on LinkedIn, for example, about certain levels of roles or sectors of roles, and some of the feeling that actually they're not good enough, they're not senior enough. You can't be skilled enough or educated enough if you've chosen to do that role or if you've opted to do that role. And I've seen, particularly with some of the charity stuff that I've done, and some of the stuff that I've done in Uganda as part of Hope for Justice, and some of the other stuff that I've done here in the UK with the YMCA, I have seen some people with nothing, right? I mean nothing. I mean they're wearing like a t-shirt, and yet they are the happiest and most hopeful and positive people that I have ever spoken to in my entire life. And to see their expressions and their happiness and their hope and their joy and all of those things, and you then, I suppose, I come back to my nice house, I come back to my nice family, I come back to my nice comfy bed and think, where did we go so wrong? All right. And it's like, we don't have to choose. And I think that was a big realization for me. I think the first trip that I did to Uganda, I met the fabulous David Faulkner and Ian Pettigrew. We the three of us still speak to each other on a weekly basis. But it was Ian that pointed out to me, because I had a real issue when we got straight back to the UK, in that, would I rather have nothing and be that happy and hopeful? Mm-hmm. Or would I rather have the comfort of this comfortable life and live in misery? And he said, but you don't, and it was Ian, and he's like, but you don't have to choose. The fact that you've got a comfortable life and you've done as well for yourself as you have is what enables you and allows you to come and do this charity work and help the people that you're helping. It doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and you can make an impact in your work to allow you to then make a bigger impact with the stuff that you're doing. I really needed that, because that really got me to say, everything really, I think for me, started to change at that point. My gratitude began to change, my daily gratitude practice began to change. Everything that I started to do began to change, because I really did recognize it's not about the stuff, right? The stuff makes stuff easier. The nice house, the nice car, the nice holidays, the money in the bank, all of that makes stuff easier. But that's not what makes me happy. That's not what gives me joy. That's not what gives me hope. It's the big part of me. It's the who I am that makes me happy and hopeful and full of joy and all of that sort of stuff. Everything else really is just a bonus.
I so love this. One of my biggest learnings in the last 6 months, Kelly, has been around what's called supremacy culture patterns. Mm-hmm. And apparently a lot of the systemic challenges, social justice, environmental justice, workplace injustice, comes about because of 18 key patterns. And I'm going to pop it up here for those that may or may not come across this before. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like the phrase white supremacy culture pattern, but that's basically what it is. It just originates from, 500 years of colonialism. And that's what we're still dealing with, is either or thinking is a pattern of behaviour that we've all been taught from school and from our parents. And when we realise that actually we can hold, and I love what Ian did for you, like you can hold what seems to be competing views in each hand and still move forward. There's so much freedom in that, Kelly.
Yeah, totally. But, I think a lot of us are still trying to get there. I think, again, when we look at the workplaces, when we look at leaders, and again, when I left corporate, I did have a bit of a, who am I moment? Because for so many years, I had been the HR director. Right, I was the HR director. I had the salary, I had the status, I had the team. I was driving this change. I was doing all of this stuff, and it was then take away or remove the HR director, and it's who am I? Who am I without that? When I turned 40 during the pandemic, and again, that was another kind of big thing for me. I had my sons when I was 20, continue to work and do all of this stuff for my sons, but I kind of realized, even when I was pregnant with my sons, the language, the patterns, the behaviors that I was creating was, when my sons are 20, I'll be 40. And then I can kind of do whatever it is that I want. But I had these big goals of where I'd be at 40. And I turned 40 during the pandemic, right? So I didn't even get the big celebration that I'd been thinking about for 20 years. And I realized that my sons had grown, and I wasn't where I thought I'd be, because I was no longer in this corporate space, and I hadn't got this goal that it was that I thought I wanted. I was now running my own business. I was in a completely different space, My sons, albeit they're still living at home, but you know, they've got their own life. And I got to this kind of like, what now? Right? What now? And who am I? You know, if I don't need to be full-time mum, and if I'm not doing this and I'm not doing this, and this goal is now not there, again, who am I and what is it that I'm doing? And I think again, that then caused me to look internally even more, and go in even more, and look at who I am at the core, and look at the boundaries, and look at the time that I create for myself, and do that core-led stuff for me, to say, right, this is my driver, this is what gets me out of bed in the morning, this is my passion, this is the conversation that I want to contribute to, this is the change that I want to help create, and the space that I want to be in. And that also became a huge driver for me.
It's so lovely to catch up with you after a few years, Kelly, because it's just, the clarity is really interesting. Like you say, like I am still in the corporate space, right? When you worked with me 4 years ago, I'm still in that same company.
Yeah.
But in a very different shape, shall we say, within it.
Yeah.
And it's really, I love this invitation you're offering today, which is, you know, our self-worth, my words, are not attached to the things outside of you, right? And I just think that if I could invite people watching us live or taking, like, please sit in that reflection, because that would have saved 25 years of my internal torment had I realised that.
And me as well at the time. But again, you know, I think a lot of us, I've got young nieces, and I look at my, you know, I look at my young nieces, and my sons are the same. I'm sure I was the same. I'm sure you were the same, you know, when we were kids. But they just don't have a care in the world. You know, they ask for what they want to ask. If they're not in a great space, they tell you they're not in a great space. You know, if they want to run around catching bubbles, they run around catching bubbles. If they want to sit and sulk, they sit and sulk. And there's just this acceptance. You know, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I think so many of us lose that so quickly because we need to fit. And you know, and I get school systems, education systems, all of those. You know, I understand all of it. But I think the part that we're not educating on, and we're not allowing the space for, is that who are you part. You know, so many of us, I think, wait until we're in corporate and somebody says, here's one of the many different psychometric tests for you to do, right? Take a look at this psychometric and you'll understand who you are. And I can remember the first one that I was ever given, and I was like, that is nothing like me. Like, what on earth is that rubbish? And then as we sat down to kind of do the feedback, everyone was like, no, Kelly, that's you. I was like, what? Like, of course it's not. But then you start to develop that level of self-awareness. And the most recent one that I did a couple of years ago now, but the most recent one that I did, I was like, yeah, do you know what? That's absolutely spot on. That has nailed me, and that does explain it. But at the same time, it doesn't define me. Like, I am more than a psychometric test. And I think we've got to be really careful how we use them. So it doesn't define me. But a lot of us really don't get that kind of slap in the face look of, this is you, right? I'm going to hold the mirror up and say, this is you. Because we don't go through that kind of psychometric personality type coaching, shaping, developing, exploring conversations through school. We don't do it in the workplace. We don't do it through any of that. And I think that's where we start to then create some of those issues. That's where we get to the point of burnout, high stress. That's where we don't implement any of those boundaries. And I think so the cycle continues. So I think the more self-aware we can become, the more we can have those coaching conversations, hold that space and understand who we are at the core. That's where we start to create that real deep dive change.
It's so lovely. And I think, like, in terms of an invitation, I can't believe, look at the flow, 27 minutes already.
I know.
Boom, crazy. So I really want to hear about the event, but please share, like, I'm just so intrigued. Like, if you're looking at like an antidote, right? We've got people listening to us, maybe watch this back, Kelly, about the core, focus on your inside, understand who you are, self-awareness, etc. Mm-hmm. What are some of those key antidotes? Is it curiosity? Is it listening to yourself? You know, what do you invite people to explore, as well as, of course, potentially working with you? Like, is there anything someone could go away immediately with and go and check out, or, you know what I mean? Like, is there a little practice you'd invite people to go and play with? I think
it definitely starts with curiosity. I mean, the way that I start all of my coaching relationships now is by getting people to answer the question, who am I? Right? So you could do it in pairs. So Gary, who are you? and you just continue to answer that question. So it's not a one-off, right? It's not a Gary, who are you? Hi, I'm Gary. Like, hi, I'm Gary. End of conversation. So we sit with that question. And I think then when you've got nothing left to answer on that question, it's the same question, but you take it a little bit deeper. Who am I at my core? Because there is usually a difference between those two answers. I think when we start with the who are you, we can start with a lot, and I'm going to say superficial. I don't mean it in terms of superficial, but I mean the external facing stuff, like we've been talking about, like, who are you? Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm 40. I was going to say I'm 40. I'm 41. I'm 42 in September. But like, we do the name, we do the age. Like, so, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm 41. I live in Peterborough. I have 2 sons. I have 2 stepsons. I have a dog. I work as a coach. Like, that's the level that we tend to start with, and we can start to strip all of that back. If we then start with who are you at your core, that's where we can get into core values, strengths, beliefs, understanding some of the patterns that have created for me. So I think you can just sit with those questions. You can do it in pairs, but you don't go into, it's not conversation about it, because it really is, again, building that understanding in the brain and understanding where some of those patterns come from, and curiosity and having some of those light bulb moments. So I would say sit with those questions. You can journal it, you can speak it, you can do it in pairs, you can speak it out loud, whatever, and just see what comes up for you. And I think once you've got to there, then I think you're kind of ready to go on to whatever the next stage might look like for you.
What a generous invitation. Thank you for that, Kelly. So tell us about the event. What's coming up and what's going on?
So I came so again last year. I think I love coaching. I love coaching. But I think I wanted to be able to find a way to take it a bit deeper, incorporate some of the kind of mind, body, brain connection stuff, connect some of the emotions. So I am hosting next Wednesday, so June 29th, will be the first of my annual Power Up event. So it's an empowerment event. It's a full day event, an empowerment event that will be held once a year with some weird and wonderful, like literally weird and wonderful stuff that people are going to be working through. So that's going to take place June 29th. Next week is taking place in London. The second event, so next year's event, is taking place June 29th again, but on a Thursday. That will be taking place in Peterborough, and tickets will be on sale for that next week. And yeah, I want to incorporate more of that stuff. I want to be able to not just focus on the coaching and I suppose the conscious thoughts, but also being able to tap into that stuff at a deeper level, take some of those subconscious thoughts, take some of the energetic stuff, and all of those things that go on through our body. So yes, you'll find everything there.
Wonderful. We're just doing a little share of the website,
kellyswingler.com,
for you, and also testing my IT skills.
Yay! So they're the 3 events that take place regularly. And then in terms of working, so one-to-one coaching, group coaching circles, and then currently my online program.
That is amazing. Well, look, I'm going to let you go because it's doing amazing. I just think you've been so generous in just your vulnerability, your open-heartedness, and just that really clear invitation to look inside of yourself before spending too much energy, shall we say, on the stuff outside of you. What's going on inside is a pretty good place to start.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking with me. It's lovely to chat with you again.
I know. Don't leave it 4 years.
No, I won't. Yeah, take care. Have a good day.
Cheers, everyone.